Hey, it's Chris from Printing Fundamentals, and in this episode we're going to talk about filaments. So when you get started on your printing adventure and you decide that you want to start printing different things, there are three main filaments that people use, and that is PLA, which is a basic one that most people use. It's cornstarch based. It's called polylactic acid, and it is one that most people start with, and it's a low temperature, usually between like 190 and 220 with PLA and PLA plus. They make some additives for the PLA plus part of it to make it be able to print smoother and be able to adhere better layer to layer. And then there's PETG, which is similar to what your plastic bottles for Coke and Pepsi and all that stuff. And then there's ABS, and that's a much hotter needed filament, and that's what you use in everyday plastics that you use around in your cups, bowls, car parts, and internal, when your console and all that stuff. All the plastic used in a lot of things is the ABS, because it's a lot harder temperature to melt, and therefore it's can withstand higher temperatures. Like in a car, when it's sunny and the windows are up and it gets to 140 degrees on the inside, it won't warp and that kind of stuff. When you get to the higher elements, then you're going to want to use an enclosure, especially with ABS and those higher temperature filaments. They're going to cool more rapidly because there's such a difference in temperature between the surrounding air and what you're putting on the bed. So when you do ABS, you're going to want an enclosure, plus the fumes, you're going to want to vent those out, and preferably outside, out of a window if you can. You want to vent those as best as you can when you're using them. In PETG, there are some things that you're going to do, like slow the fan down, and then for like ABS, you're going to actually turn the fan off because it warps really badly when it quickly cools. But you're going to need that enclosure to keep a higher ambient temperature inside, and your bed temperature is going to be higher for those things. So PLA is usually 60-65 is pretty good. For PETG, you're going to want 70 to I think 90, and then for ABS is going to be 90 plus on the bed. So 90, 100, usually around 100 is what's recommended. But you're going to have those filaments, those are the standard filaments, and then they have other ones with additives, which is like wood, where you can actually like sand it down and stain them. And then they have ones like carbon fiber to help strengthen prints, or use that stuff for mechanical things. And then they've got other different types of filaments for specific purposes, even glow in the dark. Just one thing you got to keep in mind when you're going to filaments with additives is that they're more likely going to wear your nozzle down faster. So a lot of times when people are doing those ones, especially even the glow in the dark, is really viscous, and it'll actually, there are some of those that can actually wear your nozzle out in one roll. So you need to be cognizant of that if you're using those and you're still using brass nozzles and stuff like that. They make other types of nozzles with like hardened steel or ruby tipped that you can change into, but with those you got to be aware of the hardened nozzles. The heat transfer is going to be slower, so a lot of times you're going to have to actually increase the temperature above what you would normally do with brass. And so you just got to keep all that in your mind when you're going to try new different filaments. And be aware that the higher temperature you go, the more likely you're going to need an enclosure to keep a higher ambient temp. And so that's the main part about filaments. What you're going to want to do is every new filament you get, you're going to want to make a temp tower. Every filament, the new filament that you're going to use, do a temp tower prior to using it, just so you can eliminate that issue of printing at the wrong temperature for the filament. And you can eliminate that if you have a problem. That's one thing you can eliminate right off the bat, is you know what temperature is optimal for your printer to print that filament at, and that way you'll minimize the problems. And if you run across a problem, then you can count that out and look to other things that are causing the issue. One thing I would suggest right away is downloading this filament matrix file that I have available on the printingfundamentals.com website. It gives you all the stats that you need for each of your filaments. So when you do a new filament and you do a temp tower, you can put all that information into this filament matrix, and then it's a quick reference when you're trying to switch back and forth between filaments. If you get down the road and you have 20, 30, 40, 50 different filaments, which you're probably going to have. A lot of people like to just do a variety of things, and there's a lot of variety of stuff out there with silks and all that stuff that do some really cool things. And so the best way to do this would be to get that filament matrix file and then put all your filaments into it, and be able to quickly reference if you're flipping back and forth between stuff, you're printing things for people or whatnot, and then you'll have all the stuff, so you won't have to try to remember what it was. You can just quickly reference this file and it'll tell you all the stats you need. You can put all your stats into the thing. You could even make profiles for them in the slicer for each one, but this is also just an easy reference where you can go through and switch the stuff you need, because a lot of them will be probably similar, but you'll need to change print temp or something. So it's like you don't really need to make a profile for each one if a lot of them have similar settings, and you just need to change one or two for the specific thing. So I would recommend this. I have my own that I keep on hand just so I know when I'm going stuff. If I'm doing test prints, I use one filament because I buy it cheap in bulk, and then if I want a specific color in something, then I'll switch to the other one. But it's helpful to know that I can just look on my filament matrix and see, okay, I need this one prints at this temp, this one prints at this temp, and then you just quick switch over and go. So I would definitely recommend having this, or even make it your own, but I've already got most of the stuff in there already, so it's just an easy template to look from and just put all your information in there for every filament you got. And one last thing about filaments is that there are some out there like PLA and PETG that are hygroscopic, so HYGRO scopic, and that means that they will absorb moisture from the atmosphere. So down the line, after you started printing and you're starting to use different filaments, be very aware that over time PLA and PETG and some other filaments will actually absorb moisture from the air, and then they will become brittle, or they will cause printing problems. And so something like this, where I had this filament left over that I was using, and it's been sitting out for like 4 or 5 months, and I decided to try and use it just to see if it would print. And what happened is that it made the print really brittle and caused a bunch of layer lines and gaps and all that. So what you want to do is, when you're done using a filament that is hygroscopic, you want to put that into a resealable bag. So we've got vacuum bags. I bought these on AliExpress like 30 for 30 bucks. And so you put your filament roll in there, and then you can use a pump. I've got a that comes with a manual pump, but it's a pain in the butt to use. It's that gray one back there. What I did is bought an actual electronic pump for 20 bucks, and you just set on there and you vacuum seal it in, and it works like a charm, so you don't have to put a bunch of effort into pushing and pulling a manual pump. But you want to get ones like these, and then you can store them in there with a desiccant pack, and that'll keep them from absorbing any moisture. And if you end up leaving one out, and because a lot of times I'll be doing projects and I'll swap out filaments for different things, and then I'll leave one to the side and I'll forget about it for a couple months, and then if I need to use it again, I automatically dry it. And there are plenty of dryers out there, filament dryers. The one I've got is the Solvo 3D. It does 2 at a time, and that's why I chose it. They all pretty much work pretty well. Just got to do the research and then decide which one you want to get. But I definitely recommend filament dryer. It does make a big difference, and you can prevent that from happening. And then you can vacuum seal and store them away with a desiccant pack. And that's what I've got. So just keep that in mind as you're starting on your printing adventure, that you're going to eventually need this down the road to help keep your filaments fresh and be able to print them on a moment's notice and not have to do a bunch of stuff with it, or try and troubleshoot something because it printed fine when I had it a month ago, and then I decided to print a new thing, and now the filament, I haven't done anything with it, and now it's having problems. Just be mindful of that with your printing and filaments and leaving them out. If you find these videos helpful, please like and subscribe to my YouTube, or go to printingfundamentals.com.